Basically, I've been asked to talk about Shiism in Europe and Shiism globally, Shiite influences in the world. I'll try to do that by going through the prism of my own research into the topic of European Shiism that I've been working on for the past 3, 4, 5 years by now. Although this wasn't particularly a topic that was covering all countries of Europe or anything of the sort, it was particularly a study of Shiism in its institutional manifestations in 2 countries, namely the United Kingdom and in the Netherlands. So that's a quite important limitation to understand what I'm talking about. On the other hand, an argument could also be made for saying that, to a degree, whichever country you take, when you're studying topics that have to do with European Islam, ideally speaking, theoretically speaking, you should be able to point them out in any European country. It's an argument that doesn't hold up to scrutiny when you really follow it through, but to a degree there is a degree of truth to that I will come back to later on. So basically, my core cases were the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. I also took some excursions into the realm of Shiism in other countries. I looked into the situation in France. I looked into the situation in Germany, which are very divergent cases of Shiism, and that is one of the first things which will strike you when looking into the organizational life of Shiism in Europe, the degree to which it is nationally particular, nationally in the sense of depending on the country where you're looking at it. In the case of France, clearly the Shiism that you find there is a very particular sort of Shiism to do with French colonial history, with l'outre-mer. You don't have anything like that in a place such as Germany, with a very different relation to colonialism historically, and with very different groups that have come to Germany. So you have a tremendous amount of difference. Also very different in that France is a relatively unimportant settlement for Shiites in Europe, whereas Germany is one of the major places, both historically and currently as well. But France and Germany were really excursions into some other countries, whereas the core data of my research were assembled in the Netherlands and in the United Kingdom. So those are the 2 core cases of my research. So what I was planning to do today is to start off by contextualizing this research relative to studies of Islam in Europe, or European Islam, as that was the larger framework relative to which I situated my case. So to start with contextualizing the project, then I would like to get a little bit more technical, to actually focus on some of the methods that I've employed and some of the data that have come out of that research. Not to bore you, but actually because part of what I have to say about European Shiism is to do with a plea to study some of these issues just a little bit differently than is usual. Not to make any sort of an argument for a complete paradigm change or anything, but there is a certain way of doing things in studies of European Islam, which may not always be the most comprehensive way to tackle the issues that we all want to know about. So the second thing is essentially to focus on methods and to focus on some of the data that have come out of this research. And then thirdly, if time allows, to also draw out some of the socio-political implications of what I've observed to be the main institutional forms of Shiism in the Netherlands and in the United Kingdom, and that has to do particularly with the question of whether we could think of Shiism in different contexts as constituting political agency. Can Shiite organizations be thought of in any way as a political agent, whether that would be concerned with migrant politics or with with very different kinds of political activities such as civic engagement. So those are some of the core questions that I would like to address today. To start with, contextualizing some of this research, I'll say just a little bit about myself, and then I'll stop talking about myself. But it will be relevant to understand what angle I'm taking for this research. I didn't come from a background where I was thoroughly familiarized with European Islam studies. Basically, as Professor Lemon indicated, I started out in anthropology, Iranian studies, wrote a PhD thesis on Shia and Sufi orders in modern Iran. So the one element that is sort of stable there is the element of Shiism. There was a sustained interest in things Shiite. I've also worked on communities of Iranian migrants in the Netherlands, for instance. So investigating their transnational networks. So there was, on the one hand, there was a little bit of research on Iranian migrants in a European context. There was a sustained interest in things Shiites, but the things never sort of came together in a meaningful way. So when about 5 years or so, in a spare moment, I just asked myself, what actually do we know about the situation of Shiites in the Netherlands? Sorry, not in the Netherlands, but in Europe. In light of the sort of the repute of the whole field of European Islam studies. Then I thought, well, for sure, many people will have gone before me. Scholars of name will have studied that topic. It's very likely that you will have a whole corpus of literature available that has tackled that topic, and that's basically the situation of the Shia will have been mapped quite comprehensively by now. And this was basically going by the repute of the field rather than any specific knowledge of it. It was just a sort of a logical hunch, a hypothesis on the basis of how many decades we've now been having European Islam studies, and how unlikely it would be that the main sectarian variety within Islam wouldn't in some way or the other be covered in studies of European Islam. Well, actually it turned out that none of this was the case, to my great astonishment, I should say. So it seemed that when we speak about European Islam studies, we are basically talking about European Sunnism studies. There is a complete and utter sort of lacuna in the scholarly record. So to a degree that was an ideal situation to start from. On the other hand, it was really quite astounding to see that as an initial point of study. So what was known about the situation of the Shia in Europe at the time that I set out to study? Well, just some very, very basic information was known. What was known was a little bit of information about the migration history of Shiites in Europe when the larger numbers came in, and also which were the major institutions of the Shia in Europe. So those two things were, of course, known. That this was you could sort of find information in those religious establishments themselves or in the scholarly literature. So just a little bit was available about that. And if you know about that, if you know about the migration history, and you also know about the major institutions, by implication you also know a little bit about something else, which is the ethnic national background of most of the migrants that this is about. I'm not going to speak much right now about those ethnic national backgrounds, not because that would be a no-go area or because I don't want to talk about it. Actually, I want to talk about it a lot. It's the core of my data. It's the core of what I've come up with. It's the core of my research, really. So I want to talk about that